Hello and a big warm welcome to you. My name's Marion Rose.
And I'm Lael Stone, and it's so nice to be back. We haven't done a podcast for a few months as it's been a break. So how are you, my friend Marion?
I was going to say, it seems like years, isn't it? Lifetimes ago.
Yeah,
I am
yeah.
very well, thank you. Blue sky
Mm,
here. We've had no summer here. It's been
mm,
raining the whole time, which has
mm.
been what it has been. But I'm
Yeah.
so enjoying the beautiful, crystal clear blue sky, bright green
Mm,
trees. I feel so happy when the weather's like this. That's just where I'd like
mm.
to start. Should we have a conversation about the weather?
Well,
Very early parenting.
yeah. Well, I live in Melbourne or Victoria, which the joke here is you have 4 seasons in a day, which you do normally. Like it can start off at 40 degrees at 11 a.m. And then by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it's 18 degrees. So depending on where you're listening around the world, degrees in Fahrenheit, it's very, very hot. And then it goes to cold. So yes, but let's not talk about the weather because there's so many other exciting things to talk about. So you were just
It's
sharing
nice
with me,
and
Marion.
neutral though, isn't it? It's nice,
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
and safe.
Yeah, it totally is. Well, you have been working a lot over this kind of Christmas holiday season by the sounds of it.
Yeah, it was so alive for me. I had Christmas Day off and but apart from that, I haven't. But I've been really enjoying it. And so there's been no summer. I haven't had any desire to lie in the sun because there hasn't been any. So I enjoy what I do. And so I kept doing it.
Nice. That's beautiful. That's so nice to hear. I ended up having some beautiful family time because we are moving down the coast and my two beautiful adult children are not coming with us. So they're moving out, and it was actually really beautiful that we kind of all ended up being away together with some of their friends and we all got to hang out together. And I'm really just noticing the beauty of these kind of last days of all living under the same house for now, and the transitions and the changes. So it's been really sweet for me actually over these holiday time to, I don't know, just cherish my beautiful adult kiddies and, love on them and their friends and just really sit with the transitions that are happening in our family. It's beautiful, and it also can feel some big feelings there. So, but mostly it's really beautiful because I'm watching them step out and thrive and, go and live their lives, which is amazing. So it's been, for me, it's been really sweet this time and this break to just be with my family and just to really absorb these next steps, which I know for a lot of people who listen to our podcast, they've got little people and that probably feels like a lifetime away, when the time comes when your kids leave home. But, I'm doing one of those such cliche things of like it goes so quickly. Like I remember taking my son to kindergarten for the first time and, them starting school and just all those things. And now they're out there being adults living their best lives. So yeah, it's pretty beautiful.
Such a profound thing, isn't it? I've had a little baby and now they're like way bigger than us. I find it such a profound thing that continuation of connection whilst they're
Yes.
literally so completely different physically anyway.
Yes.
It's incredible
And
thing.
one of the things I find really fascinating is that I don't feel, particularly for my adult kids, my two oldest, I don't feel like I am their mother, but I don't feel like I'm their mother in the sense of that they don't need caretaking. They don't need me to make doctor's appointments for them. They don't need me to, do any of those things that we often do as mothers in that caregiving role. It really shifts, and they are like beautiful friends. And it's really changed, because I don't feel worried about them or I don't feel concerned. I'm just always delighted to see them and catch up and hang out, and I'm there to listen if they need. But it's such a shift too in the role that we're doing. So it's been really beautiful watching and observing that within myself.
So beautiful.
Yeah. So let's dive into what we're going to talk about today, because this is a big, beautiful topic that I think actually comes up a lot in a lot of the clients I would work with. And I'd probably say the same, I'm sure you'd say the same, Marion, around bringing this awareness with our parenting or how we live and how that lands in the systems that are set up in our culture and how often they are not a match. And it feels very, very tricky. And I think I have heard from quite a few parents recently because of what we've been living through in the last 2 years and not being able to drop your child at school and go into their classroom, or if that's happening at kindergarten, or different ways where we would normally have connection with people and all sorts of different stuff, has really highlighted on some level how, that doesn't work when we are raising our kids with awareness and consciousness, because that attachment, that connection, that gentleness that we need to bring, all of a sudden our society, well, not all of a sudden, our society's always been kind of the opposite of that, but a lot of people I've worked with is, wow, there is such a contrast in what I want to do and how I would love to be in the world with my children, and then what the world kind of sometimes mirrors back. So I thought, we both thought that we would dive into this topic a little bit today around the systems that we live in and how we create change on some level.
Yes. And it can be interesting to think that for some people, it's actually maybe coming across aware parenting and practicing aware parenting that starts the looking at things differently process, and the moving away from perhaps what we might call the mainstream perception of human beings and what we're here for and what children need and what humans need. For some people, it may have started, some way before, many, many years before, of actually really questioning the culture that we're born into. And I guess for me, the further along I've gone, the more I see things from that cultural perspective, that the lens becomes bigger and bigger and wider. So what I see really is that aware parenting is one of the ways to be really looking at, in particular, children, but as well us, differently. The thing is, really, it's not about supporting children to fit into the system better. It's about understanding that, number one, it can be really hard to parent in this way within this system that's operating at the time, because it's not set up to support this kind of parenting, and to support us to actually change those systems for ourselves so that we have more of the kind of culture community that is required to bring children up in ways that they thrive, but also to actually support our children to change the systems. So it's not about creating more compliant children. It's actually about helping children to be the ones who are part of changing these systems, which fundamentally do not support human beings to thrive, to be deeply connected with themselves, to be deeply connected with their families, to be deeply connected with their callings. This system and this culture is set up to do the opposite of that. So I think it's really having that bigger picture context can really help in so many ways, from deep compassion for when it's hard, to clarity about what actually might be going on. For example, when family members are feeling concerned or judging. We did a whole episode on that a few months back, just to really understand what is actually going on.
Yes. And so much of what you're saying there is, well, it was the essence of why Mel, who's my partner who built Woodline Primary with me, why we built the school. Because a lot of, she came to me and was like, I wish that what we did at home was in the classroom. I wish that it was okay for my son to have big feelings and it was held and he wasn't shamed and his name wasn't put on the board. I wish that there is choice and autonomy in what he does and where his learning is. And it really was from those discussions that we had that we went, well, what is possible here? How could we do it? And so what's been fascinating in actually setting up my school, or our school, and watching it in action is, and we're in our second year now, is watching the growth of the children and watching what has happened in the bigger system of our school with anyone who's involved in it. And what's been really fascinating, I don't know if it was you who said it to me, Marion, when we first opened Woodline, and I don't know if it was you or not. And I was, there was a lot of balls in the air and a lot of stuff was going on. We were really trying to find our feet. And I was like, oh my God, there's so many feelings. Everyone's got feelings. And I think you might have said to me something like, well, when you open up a school based on feelings, everyone's going to bring them. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, this is going to be big. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I mean, that was my intent, but somehow I missed the part of, okay, and now everybody bring them and we'll see what happens. What's been fascinating, I think, and we're only, again, this is our second year in, and we've had so much growth and so much unlearning and so many things where we've had to tweak and look at, and things in theory that I thought would be great didn't land, and then watching where it would move to is, all the guides, we call our teachers guides, that we have here, who most of them have taught in other places, have come this year and have all just said, this is what I wanted when I first became a teacher. This is what feels so right and so natural. And the contrast feels so jarring, knowing where I've come from, to come to a place like this where we are really tuning into the children, where there is the space to listen to their feelings, where there's also the space for them as adults to have feelings, and every time one of our guides or teachers or someone has something big on and they need a cry, it's welcomed, and they're all like, this isn't normal in a workplace, right? And I'm like, well, unless you feel and unless you release your feelings, then you're not going to be able to turn up for the children in the way we need to. Much like parenting, much like what we talk about with parenting all the time, we have to do our work. We have to, when our children are sometimes stuck, it's because we're stuck with our stuff, and we need to lean into where our feelings sit, and then often our children just open up and shift as well. So that's not going to be any different whether we're in a classroom or whether it's your own child at home. So how do we keep supporting these adults to feel what they need to feel in order to bring that to the children? So it's been extraordinary watching this. And I know I've shared before, I get messages every week from people all over the world saying, can you bring this school here or do it there? And I'm like, I wish I could, because I think it's the way we could do education in a different way. Now it's about what suits families and children, and there is no right or wrong within it. But I really feel this has to be another option, where it is really about connection and attunement and choice and autonomy, and seeing how a child learns best, and holding space for their feelings, and allowing them and encouraging them to be the best version of themselves. That's the vision, that's the goal, as what we're holding for Woodline. But what's interesting in setting this up to hopefully be a way that education can look, the feelings of all the adults are the ones that are the most prevalent at the moment, as it's asking them to undo all the other times when they were coerced into doing stuff, or when they didn't feel like they had a choice, or what happened in their schooling, and all those kind of pieces. What's been fascinating to watch is all those elements turn up, and listen to them and allow them to be healed as we're doing this for the children. And there's lots there for everybody, so we're all a beautiful, fabulous work in progress. But what it really, as I stand back and watch what's happening there, I see, and this has got a lot to do with parents I've worked with over the years, exactly as you said earlier, trying to help our kids fit into a system that doesn't respond to them in the way that we want as parents. And I watched that navigating my own children who went through mainstream schooling, and how do I bring this aware parenting and all I stand for in a system that is all still based on punishments, rewards, shaming, and how do we navigate it? And really, there is no doubt for me that watching my children go through those years of education is what fueled a desire to build something different. I'm a bit sad that it was too late for them, but I trust their journeys and what they learned through it, that has given us the fuel to create something different. And so I think it sits in a really tricky place for some parents, because there's not schools like Woodline everywhere. And for some parents, home learning and homeschooling isn't an option. And how do we navigate or change or bring about some change to these systems so that our children can be heard and seen and move into thriving, not just surviving in our systems?
I love all that you said, Lael, and I'm wondering, even the first step can always be awareness, like the awareness that the systems are not set up to support families, to support children, to support parents, and to understand then when it's hard and challenging and difficult, that is not the fault of the parent or the child. It's actually because the system is set up in a way that is not designed. It's actually, I would say, is designed to not support families. And I think that in itself is so important, because again, I think the system is set up for us to blame ourselves, to either judge ourselves. Why am I finding it so hard? Why am I so overwhelmed? Why, if a parent's maybe going out to work all day and the child's going to school all day and then they're exhausted every night, I mean, that the system wants people to believe there's something wrong with them for finding that hard, rather than looking at the system, and that the system is not in any way set up to support families. So I think that can often be even the first step to go, rather than judging yourself as a parent or judging your child, is actually see, of course it's hard, and to be deeply compassionate with both of you for finding it hard, through no fault of your own, but through the challenge of fitting into a system that is fundamentally set up to disconnect us from ourselves, our families, our culture, the land, our wisdom, all the things. So I think that in itself can be really primary and fundamental in having a different relationship with ourselves.
I think that is just such a really powerful point, because we often, you're so right, we default to, well, why can't my child cope, or why can't I cope, and why aren't they just being good and doing what everyone else is being told to do? And you're so right, it actually, they're not meant to, and I have found that for my kids particularly, they did struggle in the system and they did push back a bit, and there were many times where they would come home and say, this and this and this happened, and I got in trouble for it. And I'd be like, and well, how does that feel for you? And they'd be like, well, that teacher was so not in their authenticity, and they were so shaming, and they could see what was going on, and they would make a stand for it, or they would speak back to it. And I was incredibly proud. I was like, amazing, look, you've seen the contrast of what that looks like, and how do we also keep you just to get you through what this may look like. And I look back, and and I do feel like some sadness about this. I remember, like, with my son, maybe when he was in year 8, and he'd come home from school and he was like, this just sucks. I just don't want to do it. And at that time, I didn't have the capacity to home learn. I didn't know what else was available to him. And he was an athlete right from the moment he was born. He really needed to move his body. And I remember saying things to him, mate, I know it's hard. You just got to do another few years and get through. And then you can go to the soccer school. And, and I look back now and think, I trust that it was exactly how it was. But I feel sad that I was like, sorry, buddy, you got to suck it up. And he did. And, he's a pretty resilient dude. And, he got through it. And then he went to a soccer college for, year 11 and 12. And he loved it and he thrived. And it was brilliant because it just spoke a language that resonated with him. And he got to play soccer every day. And it was actually brilliant for him. And, he's off doing his thing now really happily. But, there was sadness in me as a parent that I look back now and think, sorry, bad luck, that's where we are. And, I feel grateful now that, we've created something, or we're standing for something to show people that change can happen, and that we can do it in a different way, and that it is possible. Because I think what I probably needed way back then, many years ago, was someone to say, hey, it can be done differently. But I wasn't ready back then to, change a outdated 1,000-year-old system. Not that I'm doing that, but
I'm glad you are now. I'm glad you are now.
No, I'm laughing about that, because that is not why we're doing it. We're doing it just to, I don't know, we're doing it because it feels
Yes,
right.
you are.
Well, I just think it's about saying it's possible now. And I know that's not, everybody's not going to go and start a school or start a kindergarten or start a university and all those kind of things. And, it takes a lot of grit and the right support and all the things to make those things happen. But there are things that you can do. There are so many things you can do as a parent to say, hey, how could this be done differently? And whether that is when you drop your child off to daycare or kindergarten or school, to find other ways to talk to the staff there to say, hey, this is what I find works best. Is this possible? Can we give this a go? Giving them information around separation and listening to feelings or attachments or whatever it is that, don't underestimate or doubt what you say and what you stand for, and speaking to others about it, about what can be changed. Because so many, I think, educators don't know how it could look different, and we're doing just what we've always done, and we do it because it's easy on some level and it's the default and it's what we know. But I think it is the parents that can create the waves of change by actually saying, hey, this doesn't feel so great. Is there another way of doing it? I had an email from a parent who messaged me about her child's school saying, they just use shaming all the time to get the kids to do what they need to. And they use lots of punishments and rewards. And do you have any information I could send them to say, could you do this differently? And she said, I've got, one teacher who's really receptive to wanting to look at it and, might be able to drive it. And, I gave her some references of stuff. I was like, go and look at Alfie Cohen's stuff in education. He's written lots of wonderful things about it. That are great resources to use, and why our system doesn't work on many levels. And I was saying to her, but you don't doubt what seeds you can plant, but also do know that this is a big ship to turn, and that it's been this way for a really long time, and small steps matter. And then there's also all the beautiful stuff you can do with your own child to counteract what may have gone on, but also help them understand where that comes from and what that looks like. And I think that's what I really tried to do with my kids who were in the system, to say, hey, let me help you understand the system. Let me help you understand how this works, how perhaps the world works, how it's always worked, this behaviorism stuff, all that kind of stuff. So that then at least they had information and knowledge to go, this is actually probably nothing to do with me. This is how this looks. And that was powerful for them.
Yeah, I really think that information is so key, isn't it? To support children like you did with your kids, and how clearly they would come back to realize, so that they didn't internalize the judgment or the shaming or the teacher having a hard day. The more we support, I mean, I don't have any experience of that, but what I see is that the beauty of the information piece, and of course information being that key element in aware parenting, the 3 reasons for children and adults behavior, and one of those is information, and just actually again understanding these systems so that we can understand what's actually happening can make a profound difference.
I get asked a lot since opening Woodline from teachers who say, can you please come and do some training with our teachers at our school? Like, can you run programs for us? And, every part of me wants to go, yes, amazing. And then, I've had to really, really think about it, because I feel like what I'm going to offer you is a Band-Aid that's probably not going to change anything, because the system on some level, or the way that it's been done in many, education places, is still so steeped in that behaviorism, and trying to move 25 kids in one way, or trying to teach 25 children with one adult, which is crazy when we think about it, right? So crazy. And of course, the children who are the loudest are going to get the attention, and then there's so many kids that just kind of disconnect and shut down. And then there's others who try to be good. And, it's so crazy that we expect these adults to be able to do this job without the support they need, and without, others in the classroom to hold, and all those kind of things. So part of me is like, yeah, look, I would love to, but I feel like what I'm going to offer you is going to be disheartening, because it works well, and I see that it works well, but only when the system's shifted. You can't put kids' names on the board, or you can't shame them to get them to do what you want. And you have to find ways to make it safe enough for them to tell you how they feel. But how do we do that when you're one adult with 25 children? Like, it's really tricky. And, I'm working with other ways of things that can be shifted and changed. But I think it is until a whole school or a whole education centre or whatever is open to it and says, yes, let's find a new way of doing it, then what we're doing is we're going to be band-aiding stuff. I mean, and there's no doubt that empathy and compassion and tuning into children and, is still so important. Like, they're little things that many educators do beautifully already and can do. But I also feel so deeply for them that they're up against odds that don't support what they instinctively know and want to do, because it's not supported in the whole structure of how it works.
Changing systems is such a big thing, isn't it? And from my experience, which has been not ever wanting to send my kids to school and actually wanting to completely leave that system and create something entirely new, which in so many ways I've really enjoyed. And I've still found, because we don't live in a culture also that supports home learning or natural learning or home education or homeschooling, whatever you want to call it, is that I have also found it really hard at times, not in the early years when they were little, but particularly as we had more and more friends when they were young. They had lots of friends and community, and more children went to school and people moved away. And so we really experienced that, just not having the community and the support, and how that also doesn't work without that. We need that.
Totally. Yeah.
So that's been my experience as well. So again, to really understand, looking at the cultural and bigger perspective, I could pick up those sticks and judge myself, but what I do is just go, this is hard. Whatever we do, whether we choose to go to school, send our kids to school, choose to create new schools, do homeschooling, natural learning, whatever it is, because we still live in a wider culture that is fundamentally different to that in terms of how it perceives and treats human beings of all ages, it's going to be hard, and it's going to require a lot from us, and it's going to require a lot for us to aim to put in place what is missing in this system, which is things like community, which is things like listening to feelings of all, of parents and teachers and children. And there's so many things that we need to actually add in, which of course is big and hard, and we're probably not going to be able to do all of it, because who can create a new culture on their own? It is requiring a whole shift. So I just really want to acknowledge all of us living at this time where I do believe it is like the collapse of this culture, this civilization. I believe we're actually going through the death throes of that at the moment. And of course, that's inevitably going to be, of course, beautiful at times, but challenging and hard, and require every little bit of gusto and values and care that we've got to actually keep showing up and to be doing things in different ways and living from a completely different paradigm. It's hard to do that within the old paradigm. And I think anyone out there listening, that what you're doing is amazing, whatever it is that you're doing, to be actually looking at parenting through a different lens and aiming to do it differently from what generations have done in your family, what probably everyone or most people you see around you doing, what the whole system is set up to support, is a profound and amazing and wondrous thing.
Yes to all of that. And I just love everything you said there, because no matter where you look, it's, even if there's so many more people who are now choosing homeschooling or home learning, especially after the last 2 years of what we've lived through, and people going, well, I don't want my child sitting on a screen all day anymore. And so there's so many more people who are doing it now, and there's more communities popping up, and there's more co-ops popping up. And it's brilliant, because they're finding their way of doing it in a different way for their children, which is, I just so love and celebrate. Yet what you said, it's also not easy, because we need the community to do it. We need, and I found that homeschooling my daughter last year, who was 13, like, it was wonderful, but she just really missed friends. Like, she would see her friends on the weekends, but one of the hardest parts was not having kids who she really loved learning with them. And so because of COVID, and because we couldn't really see people, it was really tricky, right? And there were parts that felt amazing, but there were parts that were really hard for her. And I thought, how do we find a whole other way of doing this? And what's interesting is she's chosen to go back to school this year. As such, she started at a new school. And even though so much of the reason why she wanted to homeschool was because, I totally dislike the whole behavior stuff, and I have to pull my socks up, and all the things that go with it, she came to a place and she said, you know what, but I'm willing to go back. I see how it works, but I really want to go learn some other stuff, and I really want to create some new friendships and all those kind of things. So there's a completely different energy that she's going back with, because it's like she understands it, and there's parts that she doesn't love, but it's almost like it doesn't touch her, because she's like, nah, I'm here to connect with people, and I'm here to learn some cool things, and I'll see how it goes for now. And it's been a very different energy that I've watched her do it with, and she's really enjoying it for now, right? And I'm like, well, let's give it a go now and see what it looks like. But I love that people are opening up to other possibilities, and I love that you just said it's not easy, and so hang in there and keep connecting with other people. And the community is more important. It's always been important, but it is so important now, so that we feel like we're not alone, and that perhaps if you do away parenting, or you parent in a way that not many others do around you, it can feel really lonely and isolating, right? But there is a whole community out there in the world who get it. And it is sometimes finding and connecting in with them so that it gives you even more confidence to go, yeah, what I'm doing feels right, or this feels good. And maybe that is that your children still are part of the systems, but it's perhaps even just catching up with other like-minded parents and hanging out, because we need that. We so need that. And particularly when you're new into the aware parenting journey, we need to see and listen to how others do it and see how it looks. Like, that was all I was craving for right in the very beginning. I was like, show me what this looks like in practice. And is this normal? And is that okay? And I mean, they're most of the messages we get all the time, isn't it, Marion? Is like, is this okay? And is this what that means? And we are so needing the village, so needing the village.
Yeah, and which comes back to me, so this isn't aware parenting, it's more the Marion method work is like to me, the disconnected domination culture is based on two things. Number one is disconnections, it's based on separation. It does everything it can to separate babies from mothers and parents from children, da 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 da. And what we vitally need, connection needs, attachment needs, they're the core needs of human beings. So whatever we can do to meet those needs for connection is so vital for us as adults, for our children, to really support that. And on the other side as well, what I call the will needs for agency, autonomy, choice, to really do whatever we can to really be meeting those needs. And that's what I love about what you shared about your daughter, is because she understood, so she had the information, the consciousness. She knew she had absolute choice because you'd done homeschooling, so she knew that she had choice. So she made that choice to go back in and to learn and to make new friends, to have connection. It's a completely different thing to do that from a place of choice and agency and awareness and compassion, from a place of coercion, or not understanding, or self-judgment, or judgment of others. So the more we can, and even fairly young children, to support them to know that if they're being, if a teacher or an adult is being harsh with them, that's never about them as a child. It's always about what's going on for the adult. Even like simple things simple things like that can make a huge difference for a child.
I saw one of our colleagues actually was posting something during the week that she tagged me in around. It was a post about 5 and 6-year-olds being shamed for not doing the right thing in school. And it was heartbreaking reading what it was. And she was saying, we have to do this differently. Like, this is not okay. This is what we're setting up. And that it still seemed like it's all right, and it's heartbreaking. I think when different, you're like, this is not okay. But it really, I invite all the parents out there listening to stand up and say something, to say, this is not okay. There are different ways of doing it, and it is tricky sometimes, and we do need support. But it is so important that we do this, because you're so right. It is not okay. It is not okay for any child to be shamed, or to be put in the corner, or to be kept in at lunchtime because they find it hard to sit still, or because they keep talking. Like, where can we lean into the needs of what is going on for this child? What is happening behind what we're seeing there? How can we support them so that they can get their needs met? Here, it just is. It really makes me sad. And I know I'm about to put a disclaimer of, I know we're all doing the best job we know how, and I know the systems are broken. There's all of that.
Yes.
It also really pisses me off and makes me sad, because
Yes.
I'm like, there is other ways. There are other ways.
Yeah, I really hear the pissed offness and the sadness, and love it, because that's, feeling our feelings around these things is what mobilizes us to create massive change like you've done. We need to have that. To me, it's again that that outrage and that frustration is, no, we are not willing for this anymore. And again, even though I didn't send my kids to school, I know from working with people over the years is that, and actually one of the reasons I didn't send my kids to school, because I knew all my own school stuff would come up, which it did anyway, but is that to realize that we are the parents, we are the adults. And I think what happens so often for parents when they send their child to school is because they're reminded of what it was like for them in school, they often return to the younger parts of them. So they go into compliance, or I'll just do what the teacher says, or do what the school says, rather than actually realizing that they are an adult and they do have choice, and it is their child. we don't own our children, but they are the advocate. We are the advocates for our children. So to actually
Yes.
understand it, even if 50% of parents went into any school and said, actually, we're not willing for you to do this anymore to our children, the school would need, the system would need to change. So it's again remembering that we are powerful. We are, again, the disconnected domination culture tries to trick us to believe that we're not, and that we have to just comply and we have to fit into these systems. We have to do what we're told because that's what we experienced growing up. But as adults, it's not true. It isn't true. We are incredibly powerful and we can create change, even if it's, we can change the whole system in 5 minutes, but we can create change in our families.
It just, yes, I am listening to you and I'm thinking about, I was such a good girl at school, such a good girl. I never really caused trouble or wanted to get in trouble or did anything wrong. But what woke in me, particularly when I was in secondary school and I went to a private school, is the message I got was from the adults: you do as we say. You're a young girl, you don't, what you've got to say is actually not really that important. And there were things that went on where I felt really outraged and I would try and speak them and they were shut down. And my biggest memory, often when I think about why did I want to help create this school, it's because I remember that feeling as a 14 or 15-year-old where my voice it wasn't heard. I had no agency, and I hated that feeling. And, I got through secondary school and I've always had such a, there's been feelings for me around the school. And there's a lot of feelings that often turn up for me when I feel like I don't have my own freedom, when I feel like I don't have choice and I'm being made to do stuff, which was, the last 2 years of what's happened on the planet. All my ragey feelings come up around what that young girl felt like. And I just, even in building our school, I was like, I do not want children to ever feel like that, especially, well, at our school, no. They all have something to say and they will be heard and we will hold space for them. And I don't want them to ever feel that this is, they don't have a voice, because, and I feel that way for my own children. I work so hard to make it safe enough for them to share what is going on, how they feel, what is alive for them, because that is the aftermath of those feelings for me. That, again, as you say, the outrage, it fuels change. It fuels the passion to say, I want to do it differently. And I wonder, as parents are listening to that, what your version of that is. Was it when you were in kindergarten? Was it at primary school? Was it just your family of origin that you grew up in? Where does it sit for you, that anger or those feelings of not being able to have a voice or choice or autonomy, or, not be able to be who you needed to be, right? And where does it still sit within you? And what can you do with that to advocate for your kids or make a difference?
Yes. Yeah. And we've done quite a few podcasts around power and powerlessness and things like that too. So if you want to go back and have a look at any of those, or have a listen to any of those. And I so resonate. I remember when I created my power and powerlessness course about 7 years ago, I was like, I really want to understand powerlessness. And I really dived in deep into my own experiences of powerlessness. And what I realized that is probably tens of thousands of times at school and as a child just growing up in the 70s and 80s, I would have been told you can't do that and you should do that and you shouldn't do that and you have to do this, and the excruciating powerlessness there. But not only there, but also medical procedures like dentist procedures. It's huge, the powerlessness that we feel. And that's been part of my reason. Like I didn't want my children to experience not having choice and agency. That's why I didn't send them to school. And and also when we talk about the title of this about systems, it's not just about the education system. The what I call the DDC, the disconnected domination culture, operates in all the systems. So we've both been heavily involved in birth, you even more so than I. And again, I see the same thing as women who give away their power and comply and believe that someone else knows more about their bodies. And yes, there are cases where that's so needed, but it's the system that trains us to believe that someone else knows better than us and that we should just do what they say. The same for I think about my mum and doctors. My mum's 90, and I still see for her, if the doctor tells her to do something, it's like this, I say, the doctor's there to serve you, not to tell you what to do. And it's so inculcated, and I think less and less so, but do what the doctor says, or do what the teacher says, or do what the politician says, rather than that we are all incredibly powerful, and actually we really need to attend to our own powerlessness and our hurts around power in order to really understand how powerful we are, and to also to be responding so that we're not reacting from that kind of reactivity or rebellion, but actually from our true, what I call our will energy. So from our true power, and to understand that we really are powerful. So it's not coming from that rebellious teenager place, but from that true, I am powerful as a human being.
Yes. So yes to all of that. And this is, I mean, we talk about aware parenting. The powerlessness piece is just the golden nugget of being a parent, because our beautiful children come along and don't do what we want them to do. And often we feel really powerless and feel really out of control. And so many parents often say, why do I yell and why do I lose it? I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, think about what it's tapping you into, all those times where we've felt powerless, all those times we haven't got our needs met, and what is activated in us. So, if you want to know where your powerlessness sits, just tune into how you're feeling about being a parent and what comes up for you and all those other elements.
Particularly when you ask them to do something, they say no. That will often take us to our powerlessness hurts, or the places where people didn't do. People said no to us. People didn't give us choice and agency and autonomy.
Well, they didn't respect our no.
Didn't hear our no, and also didn't hear our outrage and frustration, which is the expression of all the time, the healthy release and healing of all the times we didn't get to choose.
Yes.
And of course, totally. This is so necessary. And if we are to change the system, we do need to attend to these places of powerlessness in ourselves, because what I see is, in terms of systemic change, that's often come from either people comply with it or they try to rebel to the system. And that isn't, change cannot happen through either of those ways. It really needs to happen through actual true power, which means we need to have attended to enough of those childhood experiences and feelings to be actually in our true power, rather than our often kind of adolescent, I would use a swear word here, but I'm aware children might be listening. Some of those swear word energy, which is important and powerful energy, but to find it to, what I often find is to go from that rebellious outrage, want to swear at, want to, throw things, into actually the true, powerful, beautiful energy that isn't aggression, isn't trying to hurt people, but it's powerful and it is not willing for things to continue in the way that they have. That's what we need. We need a lot of adults standing in that. I am not willing for this system to continue anymore, because it does not serve babies. It doesn't serve children. It doesn't serve families. It actually doesn't serve anyone. It may appear to, and some people might seem to do really well in this system, but actually truly and truthfully, it doesn't serve anyone.
I love that. I love that invitation to come from that place of power within, not the rebellion. Like, it's, as you're talking about that, it's making me think about when I first started working in birth. I worked in birth because I was outraged at the system and the trauma women were having. And it was like I would go into battle like for a year or two. I was so outraged. I was so angry. Like, I wanted to just change it all. And funnily enough, no one was listening, because I was just, people were probably like, oh my God, Lael, settle down. Because it was so my own powerlessness and rage within it. And then I really began to understand how impactful my energy was and why nobody was listening, and the embodiment of what it meant, which was to empower myself, but also to come from a different place. And that's where I began to see change. And that's where education was really powerful. And I started educating women, and more people would come and then make choices that felt right for them. And it wasn't because I was yelling and screaming. It was because I was like, hey, how's it feel for you? And there is another way, and you are powerful, and you actually can choose that if that feels good for you. And you can get a second opinion if that feels right for you. And ask for what you want, and all those kind of beautiful things. I began to see, I think what it really turned around for me, so many women I would work with, and I would say, you actually can question that, or you could say no, or you can make a different choice. And the response so many times was, oh, but I don't want to upset my doctor. And I'd be like, okay, so let's take a look at that. And exactly like, he's working for you. You're paying him, right? He should be the one going, how are you? Like, what can I do for you? And yes, he has knowledge and beautiful wisdom of what this looks like, but you are powerful in this, and it is not about keeping him happy. It is about, what do you want? This is your one opportunity to do this. You don't want to look back and say, I wish I had it, right? You want to be open to the experience, but you want to make choices that come from the place of power within, not from fear.
And that's what coming back to aware parenting, is what I love about it, and what I really learned through observing my children in particular, but many others as well, is that, of course, that's what we want for our children, to feel truly powerful. And the more we listen to their tears, and particularly their tantrums, their rage, the expression of their frustration, the more they get to express it in the, whatever their age they are, it might be that, it's really big energy. But the more it's expressed and released, the more that powerful they actually feel, not in a I need to go and bash people place, but a true power way, which is they feel powerful in their bodies. Because of course, when we're feeling powerless as a child, that's the time where we're going to go and take the other child's toy or bash them over the head with a plastic truck. And the same for us as adults. It's when we feel powerless that we are most likely to turn to power over. And we've talked about this before in terms of, in those power and powerlessness podcasts, that's what we see in the culture, that anyone who's doing that has generally not worked with their own powerlessness. That's why they're using power over. They don't actually feel true power in their bodies. So the incredible gift that we give to our children is, whenever we're able to listen to those beautiful tantrums, to actually see them express that energy through their body, the more familiar they get with that energy, and the more it's not pent up, ready to come out in aggression or power over. So they actually feel true power. They can feel life energy flowing through them. They know that then, of course, to give them choices and agency and autonomy wherever we can in their lives, that is helping them stay connected to how powerful they are as human beings.
Yes, which again then allows them to grow up and actually have very clear no's and yeses, and create more change in what we're wanting to do. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, they're not willing to be compliant. They're not willing to have power over them. I see that with my son and daughter. There's no way they're going to have someone tell them what to do. It's just not going to happen. That, imagine if everyone in the world was like that.
And I think, again, it comes back is when we feel power within ourselves, our generosity of spirit is abundant. And I see that in my children when they are feeling anchored in their own power. They are incredibly generous and kind. I can ask them to do something, and most of the time it's a yes. Or if it's inconvenient, they'll be clear on their no, and then we'll talk about it. But it's like their capacity to give and be in joy and all those kind of things is increased, because all that disconnection and powerlessness isn't in the way. There is more. I'm trying to find the right word. I don't know. I was going to say graciousness, but that doesn't feel right. It just is. I can just see the shift in it, and we see that too in adults, right? When we are not feeling, powerless, when we don't have a whole lot of feelings in ourselves or aggression, all those kind of things building up. Our natural state is to be generous and kind and helpful and open and joyous and all those kind of things. We move more into that because we don't have all that other stuff getting in the way.
And apologies again, this isn't aware parenting, but in the Marion method work, there's the love hurts and the will hurts. And so I see the more we get the love hurts are our experiences of disconnection or being judged and so on, the more we get to, often that comes out more through crying. So the more we listen to our children and their tears, and often they might move from their rage into just that heartfelt sobbing. That's often really related to how loving they're able to feel afterwards, because they just released all those feelings that actually get in the way of the being loving. So again, it's like such a different way of seeing humans, isn't it? That rather than coerce them, and so again, mainstream old style parenting has been, if a child's behaving in a way you don't enjoy, use power over them and disconnect them. That is the disconnected domination culture. And here we offer is the exact opposite. The more choice and agency we give them, the more we listen lovingly to their feelings of both loss, sadness, tears, and rage, frustration, tantrums, the more they're connected, the more interconnected they feel, and the more powerful they are. That's what we need. Lots of humans feeling deeply connected with all other humans and knowing how powerful they are to create change.
Totally. So I want to say to any parents out there whose kids are in the system, and most of them will be, like, you know, that's kind of where we sit at this moment in time, I think. Please know there is so much you can do to support your children. So that is, you know, perhaps on the day before they're going to daycare or kinder or school, like some connection time before you separate for the day. You know, lots of information. This is what's going to happen today. This is where we are, depending on the age of your child. Lots of connection time when you pick them up, and perhaps making sure there's space for them to have a beautiful release or a meltdown after the day. You know, we see that a lot in younger kids who start school. The minute they get in the car, all the big feelings come. And so just keep creating space for them to offload what it is that's been happening as they get older, or even whatever age. Like, talk to them about how it can feel unfair sometimes and what's happening. Like, give them information around how the system is really, because that can be powerful as well. And then don't be afraid to question things. Don't be afraid to say, hey, is there a way this could be different in the classroom, in the kindergarten setting? You know, this doesn't feel so great for us. Is there a way it could be done differently? And here's some information, or here's a great podcast to listen to, or you know, this is what I've observed in my child. So, you know, you never know what seeds you plant, what change can be made.
And I'd like to say, anyone sitting right on the edge of the just about to tip over off the fence into homeschooling, home learning, home education, unschooling, natural learning, whatever you call it and whatever you feel called to, and you're just waiting for a sign from life to say, I'm going to do it. Let this be the sign from life. I want to be your sign from life to say, go for it.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, you know, here's the thing, like, I have spoken to many parents who are like, I think we're going to do home learning. And I'm like, just remember, doesn't have to be forever. Like what we did a year of it. We're like, wow, that was amazing. And then my daughter really chose, you know what, actually, this is what I want. And I'm like, let's give it a go. And then we can change it again. Like, it's okay. I'm so happy to trust you in what you know you need and what that looks like for you. So just know that if it's scary, it's not forever. And there is a lot of support. I mean, you and Joss have got that beautiful course and offering that you've got around home learning. There is a lot of beautiful support out there if that's what you're choosing to do, or you're curious about it. It's worth looking into. And I also forgot to mention too, like, just, you know, if your children are in the system, we're making it sound like so bad. God,
it is so terrible. Sorry.
But if your kids are, you know, navigating these things, then don't forget about play. Don't forget about play. You know, so much of what helps our children process is through play, playing kinders and schools and all that beautiful stuff that they need to help them process. So don't forget about play. Don't forget about power reversal games, which can be so amazing. You know, if they've had a whole day of kind of feeling a bit powerless, then power reversal games are brilliant. You know, there's so many wonderful things that you can do to help your children, you know, find that way back into balance and to actually thrive and be magnificent. You know, and again, it's some children, this is magnificent. It works really well for them, and for others it doesn't. And, you know, there is not a one size fits all. And I think that's where it's really important to tune into your child of what you feel works for them, and, you know, who they are and their unique beings. So, you know, trust what you feel, trust what you know about your child.
Yeah, and whether it's school or not school is my invitation to do whatever work you can do around your own powerlessness and powerfulness, so that you know you are incredibly powerful as a parent, whether that's choosing to not do the school thing or whatever else is in the system that you want to say no to, but also if you are going down the school route, to know that you are powerful as a parent. You can profoundly affect your child's experience even when they're at school, by the way you frame it, by the way you are with them, all the things that you share, Lael. Like, you're powerful. Basically, I want to say you're powerful. You are powerful.
Yes,
that Marianne Williamson quote, "You are powerful beyond measure."
Yes, that is so true. It's so true. And I feel like, you know, so much of the work we do when we hit adulthood around healing of our own inner child stuff and all the stuff we do, it leads us back to this, to the knowing of that we are enough and that we are powerful, and to actually lean into that and be bold and brave and don't doubt what you can do, the change you can make in the world. All right. So do you want to tell people, or do you have an offering, or do you want to offer people? I mean, you just said then about just remembering your power. Is there anything else you wanted to say?
Yeah, that's it. You're powerful. So my invitation would be to look at, when you feel powerless, to know that generally that's most of the time that's from the past, although in the present time it would be very normal and natural to feel powerless as well, given what's going on. But you can also work with that in ways that help you express that in healthy ways so that you can feel powerful again. And if you want to more on that, we have got other episodes that you might want to listen to or re-listen to.
Yes. And my invitation would be to just tune into the child in you that perhaps was at kinder or school or secondary school, or how that experience was for you, and if there's anything alive there, and what you needed back then, and what you would have wanted it to look like, and and does any of that show up these days with your children or with you, and does that need some loving presence, and see what can happen there. So yes.
Yum. Offerings, Lael, have you got an immersion coming up?
Yes, I have an immersion coming up on the 28th of February. It's a level 1 immersion. So that is starting. I'm going to open bookings next week. I know this is tricky because people listen at different times, but we're currently the kind of second week of February here in 2022. Are we in 2022? I don't even know. When people ask me how
I think
old
it's
I am,
2082. Yeah, I know. Okay. I'm the same. I never remember
I'm like,
how old I
am I?
Yeah,
I don't know. I was born here, right? Anyway, I have an immersion coming up, which will be really fun, which is beautiful, diving into our own stories and lots of aware parenting tools, and a beautiful group to work through, how you can be the parent you want to be. Yes. Yay. So I have that. What about you, Marion?
Yummy. And I've got my Aware Parenting Instructor Mentoring course for 2022 opening up. I have also an immersion, an Aware Parenting with Marion immersion, and possibly an Aware Parenting Kindred pod, which is more like parenting rather than the immersion, which is more like yours, about our inner work. So they are all also just about to open. So it's beautiful. Aware Parenting, Abundance and Richness right now, hey?
Yes, come if you want to learn more, come dive in. Yeah, beautiful. All right, thank you everybody for being here. It's really nice to be back. We're looking forward to exploring lots of beautiful things this year, aren't we? Seeing where this adventure and this podcast takes us. So thank you for everybody's support over the last 2 years. Anyway, it's been amazing. 3 years, maybe it's 3 years now. Wow.
More than 2, but less than 3. And by the way, I really want us to get to 1 million listeners this year. And we're about on 500,000. So please share. I know you normally said that, Lael, but please share it with your friends, because I want to reach 1 million.
Yes. Yes, I second that. Yeah. Thanks for being here, everybody.
So much love to you.